Maya Chan stepped into the university's main gymnasium, her worn sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. The massive space buzzed with nervous energy as dozens of engineering students set up their robotics projects for the annual competition. Tables lined the perimeter, each displaying months of careful work and ambitious dreams. She wheeled her modest cart to the far corner, away from the clusters of expensive equipment and gleaming prototypes. Her project looked simple compared to the elaborate displays around her. No flashing LED screens, no chrome finishes, no teams of assistants making last-minute adjustments. Just Maya, her backpack, and a rectangular metal box that seemed almost embarrassingly plain. The other students barely glanced her way. They were too busy with their own preparations, their voices filled with technical jargon and confident predictions. Maya had heard the whispers throughout the semester. The scholarship girl who worked 3 jobs. The one who couldn't afford proper lab time or premium components. The quiet one who always sat in the back, taking notes on whatever scrap paper she could find. Professor Williams approached her station, clipboard in hand. His expression was kind but concerned. Maya, I want you to know that participation itself is valuable. Don't put too much pressure on yourself today. She nodded politely, understanding the unspoken message. He didn't expect much from her project. Neither did anyone else in the room. The real competition was happening at the front tables, where students with family connections and unlimited budgets had built machines that looked like they belonged in a tech showcase. Marcus Rodriguez commanded the center position with his team's creation. Their robot stood 3 feet tall, covered in sensors and actuators that probably cost more than Maya's entire semester tuition. The machine moved with fluid precision, its movements choreographed by sophisticated programming that had taken his 5-person team months to develop. Check this out. Marcus called to a gathering crowd. His robot navigated through a complex obstacle course, picking up objects with mechanical precision and placing them in designated zones. The watching students murmured appreciatively as the machine completed each task flawlessly. Sarah Kim's team occupied the next table over, their sleek design focused on speed rather than complexity. Their robot zipped through challenges at impressive velocities, its lightweight frame and aerodynamic design clearly the result of professional engineering consultation. Sarah's father owned a robotics company, and the family resources showed in every carefully machined component. Maya unpacked her project slowly, trying to ignore the growing crowd around the more impressive displays. Her robot looked like something assembled in a garage, which wasn't far from the truth. She had built most of it in the basement of her apartment building, using tools borrowed from neighbors and parts salvaged from old electronics. The judges began their rounds, spending considerable time at each major display. Dr. Peterson, the department head, engaged in lengthy technical discussions with the front table teams. Industry professionals who served as guest judges took detailed notes and asked probing questions about design philosophy and implementation strategies. When they reached Maya's corner, the conversation was noticeably briefer. She explained her robot's basic functions while they nodded politely, their attention already drifting toward the next station. The machine performed its programmed tasks adequately, nothing more. It moved objects from point A to point B without fanfare or impressive flourishes. "Thank you, Maya," Dr. Peterson said with an encouraging smile that somehow felt patronizing. "We appreciate your effort." The formal judging period lasted 3 hours. Maya watched as teams demonstrated increasingly complex capabilities. Robots that could solve puzzles, create art, even engage in simple conversations with spectators. The gap between her modest creation and the competition seemed to widen with each demonstration. During the lunch break, she found herself alone at her table while other students clustered around the favorites. Some discussed internship opportunities that would surely go to the winning teams. Others debated which projects would be featured in the university's promotional materials. Maya pulled out her phone and scrolled through messages from her family. Her younger sister had sent encouraging texts all morning. Her mother had taken time off from her cleaning job to call and wish her luck. Her father, working his weekend shift at the factory, had left a voicemail telling her how proud he was regardless of the outcome. The weight of their support felt heavier than usual. They had sacrificed so much to help her reach this point. Late-night shifts to pay for her textbooks. Skipped meals so she could afford lab fees. Years of believing in her potential when she could barely afford to believe in herself. The afternoon session brought the final round of judging. This time, the evaluation focused on real-world applications. Each team had to explain how their robot could solve practical problems outside the controlled environment of the competition. Marcus's team presented their machine as a solution for warehouse automation. The sophisticated sensors and precise movements made their case compelling. Industry judges nodded approvingly as they outlined market potential and scalability. Sarah's team focused on emergency response scenarios. Their robot speed could make it valuable for search and rescue operations in dangerous environments. The presentation was polished, complete with projected revenue models and implementation timelines. When Maya's turn came, she stood before a smaller group of judges. Some had already begun packing their materials, clearly considering the serious competition over. She took a deep breath and began explaining her robot's design philosophy. "I built this for accessibility," she said simply. "Not every solution needs to be expensive or complicated to be effective." She demonstrated how her robot could be easily repaired with common tools, how its simple programming could be modified by users with basic technical knowledge, how the entire system cost less than 10% of the typical competition entry while still accomplishing essential tasks. One of the industry judges, a woman with graying hair and calloused hands, leaned forward with sudden interest. "Tell me more about the cost-effectiveness factor." Maya explained her component choices, the trade-off she had made between sophistication and affordability, how she had prioritized durability and maintainability over flashy features. The robot might not win any style points, but it could run reliably for years with minimal maintenance. The judge took extensive notes, asking detailed questions about manufacturing scalability and field serviceability. Her colleagues began paying closer attention, drawn in despite their initial dismissal. As Maya answered their questions, something shifted in the room's atmosphere. The conversation had moved beyond academic exercise into real-world application. Her robot represented a different approach to engineering, one that prioritized practical implementation over theoretical perfection. But the moment passed as the judges moved on to complete their evaluations. Maya packed her materials slowly, knowing she had given her best effort but realistic about her chances. The other teams were already celebrating, confident in their superior presentations and obvious technical advantages. The announcement ceremony would take place that evening. Winners would be revealed, scholarship opportunities discussed, internship offers extended. Maya planned to attend out of courtesy, then slip away quietly while the real winners enjoyed their moment of triumph. She had no way of knowing that her robot had already begun telling a different story, one that would unfold in ways none of them expected, starting with a simple observation that someone had quietly noted on the back wall of the gymnasium. A maintenance worker had been watching the demonstrations throughout the day. Unlike the judges and students focused on complexity and innovation, he had noticed something else entirely. Something about Maya's modest robot that everyone else had overlooked in their rush to evaluate the more impressive displays. His handwritten note, taped to the information board on the gymnasium's back wall, contained just 3 words. But those words would change everything Maya thought she knew about success, failure, and the true measure of engineering excellence. The note simply read, "Only one worked." The evening ceremony filled the university auditorium with nervous excitement. Students filled the front rows while faculty and industry guests occupied the premium seats behind them. Maya found herself in the back corner, having arrived late after her shift at the campus bookstore. Professor Williams took the stage, his voice carrying across the packed venue. The opening remarks followed the expected pattern. Congratulations to all participants, appreciation for the sponsors, acknowledgments of the judging panel's expertise. Maya half-listened, already planning her exit strategy for when the real winners were announced. Before we announce the official results, Professor Williams continued, I want to share something unexpected that came to our attention this afternoon. A murmur rippled through the audience. This deviation from the standard script caught everyone off guard, including the confident teams seated in the front rows. During today's competition, we experienced an unexpected power fluctuation in the gymnasium. For approximately 45 minutes during the afternoon judging session, several circuits in the building experienced electrical instability. Maya's stomach tightened. She remembered the lights flickering briefly during her presentation, but it hadn't seemed significant at the time. Around her, other students shifted uncomfortably, perhaps remembering similar moments when their demonstrations hadn't gone exactly as planned. Professor Williams gestured to Dr. Peterson, who rose from his seat among the judges. Dr. Peterson discovered something remarkable when reviewing the incident with our maintenance staff. Dr. Peterson approached the microphone with an expression Maya had never seen before. Gone was the polite but distant demeanor he typically showed towards students like her. Instead, his face showed something approaching wonder. Ladies and gentlemen, when the power fluctuation occurred, most of the robots in our competition simply stopped functioning. Sophisticated control systems crashed. Complex sensors went offline. Advanced programming failed to compensate for the electrical irregularity. The auditorium fell silent. Front row students exchanged worried glances, suddenly remembering moments when their machines had behaved unexpectedly during the afternoon session. However, Dr. Peterson continued, one robot continued operating normally throughout the entire incident. Not only did it maintain functionality, but it actually seemed to perform better during the challenging electrical conditions. Maya's heart began racing, but she tried to suppress the impossible hope building in her chest. It couldn't be. Her simple robot wasn't designed for such circumstances. She had built it for basic reliability, nothing more. The maintenance supervisor, Jim Rodriguez, has worked in this building for 30 years. He's seen every type of electrical issue imaginable. When he observed the competition today, he noticed something that our technical judges initially missed. Professor Williams gestured toward the back of the auditorium, where a man in work coveralls stood near the wall. Jim Rodriguez looked uncomfortable with the sudden attention, but he stepped forward when encouraged by the professor. Jim wrote a note that he posted on the information board in the gymnasium. 3 simple words that forced us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about today's competition. The tension in the room had reached breaking point. Students who had been celebrating earlier now sat in stunned silence, realizing that the competition might not have gone as they expected. The note said, only one worked. When we investigated further, we discovered that Maya Chin's robot had been the sole entry to maintain consistent operation during the electrical incident. Maya felt the blood drain from her face. Every head in the auditorium turned toward her corner, but she could barely process what was happening. Her simple, unremarkable robot had somehow outperformed machines that cost 50 times more to build. Dr. Peterson's voice grew stronger as he continued. This discovery led us to conduct additional testing this evening. We simulated various real-world conditions that robots might encounter in industrial applications. Power fluctuations, electromagnetic interference, temperature variations, humidity changes. He paused, letting the implications sink in. Maya's robot performed consistently under every condition we tested. While other entries excelled in controlled laboratory environments, hers proved reliable in the unpredictable circumstances that define actual field deployment. The industry judges had moved to the front row during the presentation. The woman with graying hair who had shown interest in Maya's cost-effectiveness demonstration was taking extensive notes, her expression intense with concentration. This revelation has forced us to reconsider our evaluation criteria, Professor Williams announced. We realized that we had been prioritizing complexity over reliability, sophistication over practicality. Maya's phone buzzed with messages from classmates who had spotted her in the back of the auditorium. Some expressed surprise, others genuine congratulations. A few seemed unable to believe that the quiet girl from the corner table had somehow upstaged their expensive projects. The judging panel met this evening to discuss these findings. Dr. Peterson said, "We concluded that true engineering excellence isn't always measured by the most impressive demonstrations or the most advanced features." He gestured toward Maya's section of the auditorium. Maya Chen designed her robot with a different philosophy. Where others pursued innovation, she prioritized reliability. Where others showcased complexity, she emphasized maintainability. Where others demonstrated what was possible, she proved what was practical. The applause started slowly, building gradually as the implications became clear. Maya remained in her seat, overwhelmed by the sudden reversal of everything she had expected from this day. "Maya, would you please join us on stage?" Professor Williams called. She made her way down the aisle on unsteady legs, aware that hundreds of eyes followed her progress. Students who had ignored her all semester now watched with expressions ranging from surprise to respect to barely concealed envy. When she reached the stage, Dr. Peterson handed her the microphone. "Would you like to explain your design philosophy to the audience?" Maya's voice trembled as she began speaking. "I didn't set out to build anything revolutionary. I just wanted to create something that would work reliably for people who couldn't afford expensive repairs or specialized maintenance." She looked out at the audience, seeing faces that had dismissed her just hours earlier. "I use simple components because they're easier to fix when something goes wrong. I avoided complex programming because it can fail in unexpected ways. I prioritized basic reliability over advanced features because most real-world problems require consistent performance, not impressive demonstrations." The industry judge with graying hands stood up. "Maya, I'm Jennifer Martinez from Pacific Industrial Solutions. Your robot represents exactly the kind of practical engineering our company needs. We've been searching for solutions that work reliably in challenging environments, not showcase pieces that fail under real-world conditions." Other industry representatives began standing, expressing similar interest. Maya listened in amazement as they described practical applications where her simple, reliable approach would prove more valuable than the sophisticated alternatives. Marcus Rodriguez, whose complex robot had dominated the early competition, approached the stage during the reception that followed. His expression mixed disappointment with genuine respect. "I have to admit," he said, extending his hand, "I completely misunderstood what this competition was really about. Your robot taught me something important about engineering priorities." Sarah Kim joined the conversation, her earlier confidence replaced by thoughtful reflection. "I think we all got caught up in trying to impress rather than trying to solve real problems. Your approach was smarter than any of us realized." The evening transformed from what Maya had expected to be a quiet disappointment into something entirely different. Industry representatives exchanged contact information with her. Faculty members discussed research opportunities. Fellow students approached with genuine interest in her design principles. But perhaps the most meaningful moment came when Jim Rodriguez, the maintenance supervisor, approached her during the reception. His weathered hands carried a lifetime of experience with machinery that either worked reliably or caused endless problems. "Young lady," he said simply, "you built something that would make my job easier. In 30 years of fixing other people's engineering mistakes, I can tell you that's rarer than you might think." His words carried more weight than all the academic accolades combined. Maya had succeeded not by impressing professors or industry judges, but by creating something that would genuinely help working people solve practical problems. As the evening wound down, Maya reflected on the day's unexpected turns. She had entered the competition expecting to prove herself through conventional measures of success. Instead, she had discovered that her different approach to problem-solving was exactly what the real world needed. The note on the back wall had changed everything, but not in the way anyone expected. It hadn't revealed a hidden talent or uncovered a secret advantage. Instead, It had illuminated a fundamental truth about engineering that everyone else had temporarily forgotten. Sometimes the best solution isn't the most impressive one. Sometimes reliability matters more than innovation. Sometimes the modest approach that simply works proves more valuable than the sophisticated alternative that fails when conditions become challenging. Maya left the auditorium that night with her perspective permanently changed. She had learned something about success that no textbook could have taught her, something that would guide every project she approached for the rest of her career. The real competition had never been about building the most impressive robot. It had been about understanding what problems truly needed solving and finding the most effective way to solve them. Maya had won not by exceeding expectations, but by focusing on what actually mattered. The back wall had told a story that none of the judges had initially recognized. But once they understood its message, everything else fell into place. 6 months after the competition, Maya walked through the doors of Pacific Industrial Solutions as their newest junior engineer. The building buzzed with activity as teams worked on projects ranging from automated farming equipment to disaster response systems. Her modest robot sat on her desk, no longer a student project, but a proof of concept that had changed her life. Jennifer Martinez had made good on her promise from that evening in the auditorium. The job offer had come within a week, followed by opportunities Maya never could have imagined. But the real transformation had happened in her approach to engineering challenges. Her first assignment involved redesigning a robotic system for water treatment plants in developing countries. The existing solution was sophisticated and effective, but it required specialized technicians and expensive replacement parts that made it impractical for remote installations. Maya applied the same philosophy that had guided her competition entry. Simple, reliable components, easy maintenance procedures, robust operation in challenging conditions. The result was a system that cost 60% less to install and 80% less to maintain over its operational lifetime. The project caught the attention of the United Nations Development Program. Within 3 months, Maya found herself presenting her design to international aid organizations looking for practical solutions to infrastructure challenges in remote regions. Traditional engineering education teaches us to push boundaries, she explained to a room full of development specialists. But sometimes the most important boundary to respect is the one between what's theoretically possible and what's practically sustainable. The presentation led to pilot programs in 3 countries. Maya's water treatment systems were installed in villages where previous high-tech solutions had failed due to maintenance complexity or component availability. Her designs worked reliably for months with minimal oversight, providing clean water to communities that had struggled with unreliable alternatives. Back at the university, Maya's story had become part of the curriculum. Professor Williams used her competition experience as a case study in engineering philosophy, challenging students to consider the difference between impressive demonstrations and effective solutions. The robotics lab had been reorganized to include a real-world testing section where electrical fluctuations, temperature variations, and other challenging conditions could be simulated. Students now evaluated their projects under practical operating conditions rather than just controlled laboratory environments. Marcus Rodriguez had changed his approach entirely after witnessing Maya's success. His senior thesis focused on simplified automation for small manufacturing businesses, prioritizing affordability and reliability over advanced features. He often referenced their conversation at the competition ceremony, crediting Maya with teaching him that engineering excellence meant solving real problems for real people. Sarah Kim had started a consulting firm that helped companies evaluate whether their technical solutions were appropriate for their intended markets. Her experience watching Maya's triumph had taught her that the most sophisticated option wasn't always the best option. The back wall of the gymnasium had been converted into a permanent display about practical engineering. Jim Rodriguez's original note was framed at the center, surrounded by examples of simple solutions that outperformed complex alternatives. Students now regularly gathered there to discuss the balance between innovation and reliability. Maya returned to campus regularly as a guest speaker, sharing her experiences with students who faced the same pressures to impress rather than to solve problems effectively. Her message was consistent: understand your constraints, respect your users' needs, and prioritize solutions that work over solutions that dazzle. One particularly memorable visit occurred during final exam week. A stressed engineering student approached her after a presentation, worried that her own senior project wasn't sophisticated enough to compete with her classmates' elaborate designs. "I built something simple," the student explained. "It works well, but it doesn't look impressive compared to what everyone else is doing." Maya smiled, remembering her own doubts from that day 6 months earlier. "Tell me about the problem you're trying to solve." The student described her project: a low-cost prosthetic hand that could be manufactured and repaired in developing countries. The design used readily available materials and could be assembled with basic tools. It wasn't as advanced as expensive alternatives, but it provided essential functionality at a fraction of the cost. "That sounds remarkably like the kind of engineering the world actually needs," Maya responded. "Don't let other people's definitions of success distract you from creating something genuinely useful." The conversation reminded Maya of how far she had traveled from that nervous morning in the gymnasium. Success hadn't come from changing her approach to match others' expectations. Instead, it had come from staying true to her principles and finding environments where those principles were valued. Her work at Pacific Industrial Solutions had expanded beyond individual projects to influence company-wide design philosophy. She led workshops, teaching other engineers to evaluate solutions based on practical effectiveness rather than technical complexity. The approach was spreading to other firms as industry leaders recognized the value of reliable, maintainable systems. The water treatment project had evolved into a comprehensive program serving communities across 4 continents. Maya's designs were being manufactured locally in each region, creating jobs while ensuring that replacement parts and technical support remained accessible. The United Nations had commissioned similar projects for solar power systems and communication networks. During a recent conference presentation, Maya reflected on the lessons learned from her competition experience. Engineering education trains us to push the limits of what's possible. But engineering practice requires us to work within the limits of what's practical. She displayed a photo of her original competition robot alongside images of the water treatment systems it had inspired. The same design principles apply at any scale. Reliability over complexity. Maintainability over sophistication. Effectiveness over impressiveness. The presentation concluded with a video message from one of the communities using her water treatment systems. A local technician explained how the simple design allowed him to maintain the equipment using tools and parts available in his village. Clean water had transformed daily life for hundreds of families, all because an engineering solution had been designed for their specific circumstances. After the conference, Maya received messages from students and professionals around the world. Many shared stories of their own experiences, choosing practical solutions over impressive alternatives. The competition had sparked a broader conversation about engineering priorities that continued to influence design decisions years later. Jim Rodriguez, the maintenance supervisor whose note had changed everything, remained in contact with Maya. He often shared stories of equipment that either worked reliably or caused constant problems, reinforcing the lessons she had learned about the importance of practical design. "You'd be amazed," he wrote in a recent email, "how many expensive machines get replaced by simple alternatives that just work better in real-world conditions. Your robot taught a lot of people something important about what engineering should actually accomplish." Maya kept his original note framed in her office, a reminder that success often comes from unexpected directions. She had entered the competition hoping to prove herself according to traditional measures of engineering excellence. Instead, she had discovered that the most meaningful recognition comes from creating solutions that genuinely help people. The back wall had told a story that none of them had expected to hear. It revealed that the most important engineering challenges aren't always the most technically sophisticated ones. Sometimes the greatest achievement is building something that simply works reliably and affordably for people who need it most. Maya's career had flourished not because she had learned to build more complex systems, but because she had learned to build better systems. The distinction had made all the difference, both for her professional success and for the communities her work continued to serve. Looking back on that transformative day, Maya realized that the competition had taught her something more valuable than any technical skill. It had shown her that engineering excellence isn't measured by how impressive a solution appears, but by how effectively it solves real problems for real people. The Backwall's message had been simple but profound. In a world full of sophisticated failures, there's extraordinary value in simple success. Maya had built her career on that foundation, creating solutions that worked reliably because they had been designed for the people who would actually use them. Years later, when young engineers sought her advice, Maya always returned to the same fundamental principle. Ask yourself, she would tell them, are you building this to impress other engineers, or to help the people who will depend on it? The answer to that question will determine whether you're doing engineering or just showing off. The Backwall had revealed a truth that transformed not just Maya's career, but her understanding of what engineering could accomplish when guided by the right priorities. Sometimes the most important story isn't told by the impressive display in the front of the room, but by the quiet observation written on a piece of paper and taped to the wall where only the most observant would notice it.